So welcome to our midweek Bible study. We're thankful that you're here. If you're watching online, either live or later on, thank you for participating with us tonight. I want to ask you to get your sheet, if you would. Let's look at the bottom of the sheet there. There's a lot going on. I know most of you are aware of these, but just some reminders. So we are, as you know, picking up Operation Christmas Child shoe boxes. They're available. They'll be available on Sunday. You can either purchase them pre-packed or you can get a box and pack them yourselves. I know we enjoy doing that, taking them and packing them, but you can do that. They are due back by November 3rd, so just keep that in mind because they have to be moved to the associational office and shipped from there to get them in time for Christmas. So please remember that. The Fall Festival will be 4 to 6 this Saturday, and we're looking forward to that. Going to have a good time. Going to have, I think we've got about 28, 29 people that are doing trunks, and we'll have some games and some good food and all that stuff. So we're looking forward to it. And so I hope that you'll come and invite and bring somebody with you. Looking forward to a great time. So we hope that you'll come and be here. This coming Tuesday night, week from last night, the 22nd, our associational annual meeting will be held right here. We'll be hosting that. And the meeting itself will start at 7 o'clock. There's a meal at 6 o'clock. But I hope that if you get an opportunity, you'll come and just hear what's going on around in our community. It's a great opportunity to hear what God is doing all across our community and all of our churches. So I hope that if you have an opportunity, you'll come. There's going to be a combined choir, and there'll be some great preaching. Marty Griffin's going to preach. And I'm looking forward to hearing Marty. And so you'll be blessed by his preaching. Somebody asked me if I'd ever heard Marty preach. I said, not officially, but he preaches every time I see him. I mean, I get preached at every time I see him. But I'm looking forward to hearing him. He's a dear brother, and I believe you'll be blessed. So hope you'll come. Hope you'll come be a part of that on Tuesday night. The best reason of all to come is that your pastor's the vice moderator. So you want to come and support your pastor, right? One person said right. That's good. Thank you, brother. I'll remember you. Yeah, I got your next lunch, okay? Good. All right. So what else is going on? We are receiving a love offering. If you want to help us out with a benevolence need that we covered a month or so ago, if you'd like to do that, just over the next couple of weeks, if you'd like to do that, please, as you give, mark your gift, benevolence, and we would appreciate that very much. You see the hurricane relief update on there. A couple of things. Remember that they do still have the truck at the associational office that you can drop off stuff, and that includes non-perishable food items. Also, if you want to do clothing, if you look at item number 2 there, the clothing can be donated at a place called the Closet. That is something that is operated by an organization called the Heart from Monroe. And they do tremendous work. And so they are collecting clothing, but notice the clothing can be donated, but it is from 9 to 1:30, and I forgot to put that on there, I guess, 9 to 1:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you'll just make a note on there, if you've got some clothing you want to take, because they're going to do that, and then they're going to transport the clothing to the area over there, to Western North Carolina. So Tuesday and Thursday, 9 to 1:30, and you see the address for that. And so please remember that. And then you can make donations through our church, through the association, or through Samaritan's Purse. So we have some individuals, I think we've got 13 or 14 that have signed up for a ministry trip, and we're working on that now. Colton is helping us connect with the church over there to make our initial trip, because we feel like we can get over there quicker and be more organized to go that way. So we hope in the next couple of days we'll get some information. But if you signed up to go, I'll be sending an email out to you in the next day or two to give you an update. It'll be a 3-day trip to start with, and then later on we'll be doing some more trips over there, because this is going to take a long time. I mean, these trips will be going on, I'm sure, for months. The figure I heard the other night was, as far as just a wild estimate of damage, is $250 billion with a B, dollars worth of damage. So it's going to be going on for a while. So there'll be opportunities. If you can't go this time, there'll be other opportunities to go and minister to folks a little bit later on. Please don't forget that early voting starts tomorrow. State of Georgia set a record yesterday for their early voting, and I would hope and pray that North Carolina will do the same. Don't forget that. There's instructions back on the table along with that other material. If you've not picked that up yet, voter guide, prayer guide, all those things, please pick that up. And there is a sheet back there that has websites for some of these local candidates. If you're like me, you don't know all these people. You may say, but I want to remind you of something. Doesn't matter what the party, what the letter is next to their name, you better find out what they stand for. And so if you're not familiar with somebody, there's some websites you can go to and check them out. So please pick that up if you haven't already. And turn to the book of Genesis. And I will ask you again tonight to turn to chapter number 46. Genesis chapter 46. As we continue in the life of Joseph. And we are in the section of this story where Jacob and his sons are getting ready. Joseph has revealed himself to his brothers. His dad now knows that he's alive. And Jacob and his sons are going to make the journey from Canaan to Egypt. And so we talked last week about the fact that there was a proposition made to Jacob, and that proposition was, Joseph is alive, your son is alive, and he wants you and all of us to come to Egypt and to be where he is. And Jacob's response at first was, I don't think I believe you. Rightly so. He didn't believe him at first. But do you remember what convinced him? They said, this is what Joseph said to tell you. He wasn't convinced, but what finally convinced old Jacob? The wagons full of resources. And when Jacob saw the wagons, the Bible says his heart revived. And he said, my son Joseph is alive, and I'm going to go and see him before I die. So that's where we left off at the end of chapter 45. So we saw Jacob's fears. Now, as we get to chapter 46, we turn from Jacob's fears to Jacob's faith. And if you look at verse 1, we touched on this last Wednesday. So Israel took his journey with all that he had, and he came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father, Isaac. Now again, someone tell me who Israel is. Israel is Jacob. That was his name. That was a name given him back in chapter 32. It means a prince with God. So anytime you see that name Israel instead of Jacob, we're looking at the spiritual side of him. We're not looking at the man of fear now. We're looking at the man of faith. And notice what he does here as they're on their journey toward Canaan. He came to a place called Beersheba, and he offered sacrifices to the God of his father, Isaac. Now, Beersheba was a little town that was the last little place before you left Canaan. And Jacob decides, before we go any further, we're going to stop right here, and we're going to offer sacrifices to God before we go any further. Wonder why? Why would he do that? Sure, he was in a hurry to see Joseph. Why would he stop in Beersheba and offer sacrifices to God? Well, let me see if I can help you a little bit. Early in the book of Genesis, there were two other guys in his family who decided to go to Egypt, and they did it too quickly, and they got in trouble. Do you remember who they were? One of them was his granddaddy. Who was Jacob's granddaddy? Come on, class. Abraham. There was a famine. Genesis chapter 13. And Abraham, on his own, without consulting God, decided to go to Egypt. That didn't turn out too well. He ended up lying about his wife, created and put a taint on the name of God. He got in trouble. A little later, his son Isaac was told specifically in Genesis chapter 26 by the Lord, Isaac, you are not to go to Egypt. And there again, that was a time of famine. You are not to go to Egypt. Jacob knew that. Jacob knew that his grandfather Abraham and his father Isaac had gotten in trouble. So with that knowledge, now tell me why you think he stopped at Beersheba to offer sacrifices to God. Why? Huh? To get God's approval, absolutely. Jacob knew enough to know as much as he wanted to see Joseph. With what he knew had happened already, he did not dare go to Egypt without God's approval, without knowing that what he was about to do was in line with God's will. Now, there's a principle there for us, guys. Sometimes something looks like the right thing to do, or circumstances seem to be pointing like it's the right way to go, or we just have a desire to do something. Do those things mean that we automatically ought to do it? If it looks right, if it feels right, if it sounds right, does that mean we just automatically ought to do it? What step are we leaving out? Huh? What question should we always ask before we do anything? What does God say? What does God say? And very often we tend, and when I say, that means we need to have a clear confirmation from God. Sometimes we'll look and it's like reading tea leaves. And we read what we want to read and say, well, this must be God speaking. Hey, I don't want to just think God is speaking to me. I want to know God is speaking to me. You got me? We don't need to think or wonder or question. We need to know, hey, God's in this. And if we don't have that clear affirmation from God, we ought not go. So that's what Jacob is doing, is making sure this is in the mind of God. I don't know how many people I've counseled with over the years who got in big trouble because they did what they thought was the right thing to do. And I'm talking about Christian people who failed to seek the mind of God, okay? So Jacob's going to stop there at Beersheba before he left Canaan officially and get God's approval. Now, let's look at how God responds to this. God responds to Jacob by revealing himself in a very special way. So look in verse 2 of chapter 46. Then, as Jacob was offering those sacrifices, worshiping, God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night, and he said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba. The sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they took their livestock, their goods, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt, Jacob and all of his descendants with him, his sons' sons, his daughters, and his sons' daughters, and all the descendants he brought with him to Egypt. So, look at verse 2 again. God speaks to Jacob and gives him some assurances, some promises. All right, what does God promise Jacob now in response to Jacob finding out if this was God's will? What does God promise him? All right, one of the things he promises him is that I'm going to make you a great nation. And we'll get back to that one in a minute. I'm going to make you a great nation. Isn't that sort of what God told Abraham? Okay, there's a renewal of that promise now. I'm going to make of you a great nation. What is something else God promised him here? What else? What else has God promised him? Look at it. All right, I will also bring you up again. What does that mean? What's he telling him? What's God telling him? You're not going to stay in Egypt forever. This is not going to be your permanent dwelling place. You're going to come back. And surely as I'm bringing you down, I'm going to bring you back, okay? All right, what else does he promise him? All right. I will go down with you. I will go down with you. I will be there with you, Jacob, and I will protect you and provide for you. And then there's another great promise about Joseph. And what is that promise? He promises him that he would see Joseph until he died, that he and Joseph would be reunited until his death. How do we know that? Well, it says that Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. So that is promising that when he dies, Joseph is going to be right there with him. How do we know that? What does it mean, he'll put his hand on your eyes? When someone passed away, what would the loved one do? Right? Close the eyes. And God is promising Jacob, when you die, your son Joseph will be right there with you, and you will see him up until that point. Amazing, amazing promises. I think God made it pretty clear that it was okay for Jacob to go, don't you? Now, let's go back to this point about, I will make of you a great nation. But I want you to see something interesting and important. God says to him there in verse 4, I will go down with you to, verse 3. Go to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. Question. Why would God move the Israelites to Egypt to make them a great nation? Why not just make them a great nation where they were? Why move them all the way to Egypt to make a great nation out of them? Why not just make them a great nation where they were? All right, certainly a part of that had to do with God's overall plan. That's good. That's part of it. Some other reasons. Why not just make them a great nation there? Why move them to Egypt? Okay, Joseph was there. All right, that's good. Keep going. Okay, all right. You're talking about being able to thrive and have things to eat. How about, first of all, what's going on right here? They're in the middle of 7 years of what? So where were there going to be more opportunities for them to survive, in Canaan or in Egypt? Egypt, of course. Not only materially, not only physically, but culturally and intellectually. God knew that there were some resources there that they needed. Okay. Something else. There's another reason too. What do we know about the land of Canaan in general, where they were living? Who else lived in the land of Canaan besides them? All right, let me ask it this way. Y'all are on the quiet side tonight. Let me ask it this way. Tell me something about the Canaanites. What kind of people were they? Excuse me? All right. But even more offensive to God, what kind of people were the Canaanites? They were idolaters. That's right. They were idolaters. They were pagans. You think God knew? And of course, we know this became a problem later on anyway, but do you think God knew that there was going to be a great danger of his people assimilating with paganism if they stayed in Canaan? Would that have been a danger? Sure. Now, the question, okay, well, preacher, if it had been a danger in Canaan, why not in Egypt? Well, here's what's interesting. The Egyptians, that wouldn't be a problem in Egypt for the following reason.